So for reals, like thanks for making the time. I know you're a busy man. So
Oh man, I'm super honored to be here. When
yeah,
you told me you were doing this, I mean, I love this type of stuff. I mean, normally I'm watching someone else and learning. So yeah,
sure, yeah,
this is great.
yeah. No, and so first episode, so definitely, I was like, man, I just kind of want to kick this off with a bang. I was like, who do I want to talk? And so, anyways, I wanted to bring you on because like, so obviously this is like the first, for the record, this is the first time we've actually met in person, correct? And
Yes,
we've been working for since March of last year. So
March of last
yeah,
year.
so a year and a few months, and that we're not meeting. So, but this relationship goes back a little bit farther than that. So, how did you meet Alan, who owned the roofing business before I did, or how did that kind of kick off with you and him?
So Alan and I met. I really feel like when we were both kind of like building our businesses.
Mm,
So we were in a business networking group together originally, and so that's like for I think most people know like a BNI group or a
okay,
tips
yeah,
group. So we would come together. It's one of those things. You come together once a week. You talk business. You exchange ideas, and clients try to learn something. We're always constantly trying to learn something. And so, yeah, him and I met. I mean, at this time, I would have to go back and say 15 years ago.
dang.
I think when we were just both building our business and sharing referrals and just kind of building that trust factor.
Yeah, so 15 years ago. So that was before A&A was even born. So you've known him before he even started
I
A&A
actually even knew him, yeah, even
when he was
prior
yeah.
to
Wow.
that. And but it's just one of those things. Like I'm always talking with people. In fact, I just gave this talk to a younger person like 2 days ago. And it's that whole thing of trust and confidence, trust and confidence, and that builds up over time, time and commitment. It just doesn't happen overnight. And so it was one of those things where, like, between him and I, like, if I called, he always knew he was, going to have a good job or get paid. And then at the same time, he was just one of those guys that always did what he said he was going to do. I mean, he just added a ton of value to our business,
Yeah, for sure.
which
And
you've done too, which isn't easy to do. I mean, I got to tell you, like, that's not super easy to do, but I think that speaks volumes to the fact that you and I have met for the first time today, but we've probably done 20, 30
mhm.
transactions together. But we already have a trust factor. I mean, because it's kind of rare actually. So this speaks to you. It's kind of rare that someone would transition or take over a company and do as good or better of a job. So
No, I appreciate that.
thank you
Yeah,
for that.
no,
I mean,
I appreciate that.
that's a huge help for us.
Yeah, I remember the first job, the first time we ever did for you was the one off of Court Street. Whatever that, right, just passing the Pizza Hut, the on the left hand side right there.
Yep,
That little, it was
exactly.
that partial roof that had just got done.
Yeah.
And I remember you texted like, "Hey, I have this roof. Can you go check it out?" And I was like, oh, "Hey, let's go." So I go out there and I like texted you like the price or whatever. I was like, "I'll send you a bid." He's like, "Nope, just get it on the schedule." I'm like, what the heck is going on?
That's
We did the job, and like literally like a week later we got paid. I was like, all right, like I really like this Lance guy,
no,
it's one of those
no,
things.
that's
So
awesome. But I think too, I mean, I felt too like if Alan trusted you in that environment, I was going to too, and it didn't take long for you to prove that to be true.
yeah, well, no, I appreciate it for sure. So Lance, so who is Lance Kenmore? I mean, you hear, and it's like I was telling my buddy, I was like, yeah, we're recording with Lance, and he's like, oh, the Kenmore team. He's like, yeah, how do you know him? He's like, dude, have you listened to the radio? It's like, it's like, how can you not? So like, but like when people think of Lance Kenmore, like, what do you do? What's kind of like your background? I know you the Kenmore team and Kenmore property, and then you do
Yeah.
your own flips and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, well, I mean, in the community, we're probably best known as, as a real estate company, and originally started as a singular real estate agent, and then kind of, I was in a fortunate spot where the industry, 15 years ago, the industry was starting to change dramatically, and I think it's about to go through another change like that again. But I was in a great spot. to be able to implement some new strategies in Tri-Cities. And so that helped us a lot. Before that, though, I do think it's important. Like if somebody asks like who I am, like, I mean, for me, I'm a husband to Karen. So number one, I operate the company with my wife. And so she probably should be the one doing the show, but she refuses to be on those type of things. That's why she said she
Sure.
married me. But she runs a lot of our back end and stuff. And then I'm a father to two amazing kids, Mason and Mia. And then we start to layer in some of these other things
Right.
like real estate agent and stuff. And so, yeah, so we run a residential real estate sales team, and then we run a property management company managing hundreds of rentals here, here in our local market. And so, yeah, it's been great to grow with the community, and we've just kind of built that up into a high functioning real estate team. So prior to 15 years ago, there really wasn't, the team concept wasn't here in Tri-Cities in real estate. And so I was traveling to seminars, and I was going to California a lot and networking with other real estate agents, and then going to the East Coast. And we just saw that was kind of the future of where the market was evolving to give the highest level of customer service. And so we spent a lot of time in those other markets figuring out what people did, how they structured their teams, and we just kind of started to bring that growth back to our team in the Tri-Cities, and then grew that out to where we are today.
Nice. And then you guys just got that building. I mean, brand new building, like what, 2, 3 years ago? How old is it?
Yeah, so that building is 2 years old, and so
Beautiful.
it was. Thank you. It was one of those things you kind of dream about.
Right.
It was like, man, I rented for a number of years, and it was one of those things like, man, if I ever get a large enough team and cash flow and enough saved up, if I could build a real estate office from scratch, like this is what I would want it to be. And so we were in a great spot. The team was growing, the market had been growing, and so we love that area of town, kind of that central business corridor
Yep.
there. And then at the same time, it's about people and relationships, right? And so, we were networking, and I had become personal friends with another Tri-City Titan, Trini Garibay, with Elite Construction.
Mm-hmm.
That's who you should have on the show as well, man. And so we had partnered up, and Trini just said, "Hey, why don't we build some buildings right there?" And I said, "Dude, we shouldn't do that. I can't afford that." And and he's like, "Well, what if we built it together and developed the project together?" And so I love being around people that challenge you like that. And I'm like, okay, that's a great idea. And so we were able to put a partnership together to purchase the land, and made it feasible when there's no way I could have done that on my own.
Right.
And so really fun to have a partner like that. And they delivered just an incredible product. And I just feel super honored that they were able to build our building when we did. So.
Yeah, and so it's not just the Kenmore building, so it's also those like the buildings right next to you guys as well?
Yeah, so
Oh,
that was
wow, I didn't
that
know
so
that.
that was the joint project. And so like how we did it is it was one piece of land that couldn't work, and this happens a lot in real estate. So the singular piece of land was too much for me to take down on my
Mhm.
own. But Trini said, okay, we can take it down together, then we can redevelop the site, split it into two lots, build the buildings at the same time, save on a lot of costs. And then when we, at the end of the project, then split it up. So where I had my building and he had his company him and David had the Chicago title, is
Mhm.
the anchor tenant there. That building has since sold. So yeah, we were able to build the project, and for them it was an investment. They sold it off because it was an investment. Then I kept mine. So
Nice. Yeah, man, I remember when I came from the Tri-Cities. So I moved here July 2018 when I first came to Kenwick. And I remember just driving down that street. And that was around that time when they were starting to build. I mean, maybe a year later or
yeah,
whatever it was, 2019 or
yeah,
2019. And so I was passing by and I was like, in the beginning, it was just land, right?
yeah.
And every time I would pass by, and the last time that I went by there, I was like, whoa, like
What
this
what are
escalated
the,
real
what
quick.
are these crazy guys
And
doing?
it's different because it's modern. It's a
Yeah.
different look. It's such a like beautiful design.
Well,
And
thank
so
you so much. And yeah, and as a builder, they tend, my wife and I, we kind of lean that direction, and so do they as a builder. And so it was just a great fit, and I'm super thankful to them. We could not have done it without them.
yeah,
So
no, that's great. And you said something that you wouldn't have been able to do by your own. And I was just talking. I can't remember who I was talking to yesterday. I was like, man, I remember like, oh, I was talking to a buddy, and he's like, yeah, man, like I want to start my own business. And I was like, you know what, man? I was like, whatever you need, because it's not a big business that he's starting up right now. And so I was like, whatever you need, whether it's financially or whether it's connections, like reach out to me, because I remember when I was starting A and I was just trying to get my foot in the door, like I would not have what I have right now if it wasn't for Alan and Stacy either.
yeah, yeah,
For them to sell or finance the business, to have that trust, to like think like, well, what if he goes bankrupt? Like then we're out
yeah.
our business, you know?
Absolutely. No, and I think that's the thing too. And it takes like a few years to realize that and figure that out. But the mentors, and for me, that's what traveling did for me, because and I think getting out of your market and getting into a peer, like a mentorship group that is outside of your market, because at the end of the day, when you look at the setup, people in your own market, a lot of times, there's very few. There are some amazing individuals in Tri-Cities that even if you're in your own market, they will help you as much as they can. But I would say that's a little bit rare, because most people have what's called a scarcity mindset.
Yes.
And so where they think there's not enough business for everybody to go around. And especially if that's like in your backyard and in your market. And so the interesting thing about it is, like, if you go to Spokane or Seattle or Texas or California, those agents, like if we're talking real estate agents or roofers, or they're a lot like you are. And they're very willing to share, to help you, because they feel there's a camaraderie there. So I always tell people is go to another market, find an industry group that you can network with people, because those will become some of your best friends and best mentors throughout your career. So I was very, very fortunate. And even there were folks in Spokane. There was a gentleman up there that back in 05, 06, Bruce Hardy, to this day, he was running probably the most successful team in Washington, and he was in Spokane, and he's a Keller Williams agency, and I'm not affiliated with Keller Williams. I'm independent, but at the time he just invited me up for 3 days, and I'll never forget those 3 days. And he's like, Lance, just come up, follow me around for 3 days, and it will totally change your life. And so,
And it
and
did.
it did. I mean, he gave me all of his systems. He showed me how he was running his
That's
team.
crazy.
I mean, he was super, super giving. And you know what? He didn't ask for anything in return. It was just like, we were at a conference together. We had some mutual friends together, and he's like, if you want to know this stuff, come up there. And then later, in our careers, I had referrals that would go to Spokane and back and forth, and there was some business that got done, but it was really just a friendship thing. And he really kind of launched us at that point to say, like, man, it became real to me. I got some great tips and stuff that he was doing, but I could see how it would work.
Yeah, so you said scarcity mindset, and it's like, yeah, I was just talking to, um, last time we were recording, I was talking, I'm like, the point of this podcast as well is like, this Tri Cities is such a like a special has such a special place in my heart, because like this is where like I got my first business, and I just love the community. It's like the biggest, smallest town I've ever been a part of, right? That's the way that I
Yes.
look. That's the way that I look at it. And it's like, but I feel like there's so much, like even with like in the roofing industry, like there's guys that are calling L and I on each other. There's guys that are like talking bad. You go to a customer's house and like, oh, you don't want that guy for this reason. And it's like, man, like even if I wanted all of the work in the Tri Cities, I wouldn't want it, because I wouldn't be able to keep up with that much work. You know what
Right.
I'm saying?
Yes.
With
Yeah.
that much headache. Like there's so much work to go around. And so if we just have that abundance mindset, we can pass referrals to each other. Hey, I'm too busy. Do you want this? Hey, I'm too busy for that. Do you want? And my biggest referral came from one of those deals. Is like, hey,
Yeah.
we're too busy. Would you take this on? It was like, absolutely. And so I feel like if we get that abundance mindset, like the biggest people that have made the most impact in my life had that type of mindset. Like you said he never asked for money. He never asked for anything. It was just, hey, follow me around and it'll change your life. And going out of your market for sure. My biggest growth in my business, I remember was going to a roofing retreat, leadership retreat in Gatlinburg, Tennessee.
Yeah, see, that's exact. It doesn't surprise me. I didn't know that about you before coming on the show and learning that, but I'm not surprised by that at all. Like it is, number one is, I was raised, even back when I went to college on the west side of the state at Pacific Lutheran University. But one of the biggest things that I left from college is the theme of our class was becoming a lifelong learner. They always told me, they're like, I don't care what you learn in this class or tomorrow, as long as you learn the fact that when you leave here, don't stop learning. See, a lot of people, they feel like they've learned their trade, right? And then they go to work in that trade, and then that's all they ever know. Or they, you become an engineer. But a lot of people, if they're going like to higher levels, they're always like, what's changing with the technology? How can I do this engineering better? What can I learn about my health, et cetera? Like if you become stagnant and stop learning, then I think the growth stops. So becoming a lifelong learner was the best thing that I ever learned.
That's good.
So that I'm always like, okay, I'm done with college. Now I need to go to this conference. I need to go to this class. I needed to get this additional certification. It doesn't stop.
One of the things that they said in Gatlinburg was, it's self-worth before net worth,
Yeah.
type of deal.
That's good. I like that.
And so,
Yeah.
but like I remember seeing it on Facebook, and some guy shared it on a roofing page and was like, it's free. It's a 3-day retreat. It's paid for in a cabin in the woods.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what's the catch to this, And so I kind of like was looking at it. I called him up and he's like, yeah, like you just got to make your way down here and we'll take care of you. And I
Yeah.
was like trying to find reviews or like,
Yeah.
I was super sketched out.
Yeah, you're like,
I'm
what
not
is
going to
the
go
catch
all the way
to
to
this?
Knoxville,
Yeah.
drive 45 minutes to Gatlinburg
Yeah.
and then like show up and I get mugged, or whatever.
Right.
And so I just went on faith at that point.
Yeah.
And so we get there, and sure as heck, they had everything set up, and the next 3 days were just like one of the most impactful times of my life. I remember one night we were sitting around this bonfire, and they were everybody was sharing their stories. And I remember, man, just like the first person that I thought about was my pops, because the things that were being said that night was just like, man, like I'm the only child, right? But like my dad, me and him butt heads so much growing up, so much. But like everything now in hindsight was like, thank you so much for not being soft on me. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for like calling me out. Thank you so much for kicking me out my junior year so I could realize that I needed to respect your rules if I was
Yeah.
living in your home.
Yeah.
And so I came back and you were like, you're on fire. You're like, I came from Gatlinburg and I saw these other, companies. And it's like, now I'm in Tri-Cities. Like, I want to bring this to my market. I want
Yeah.
to bring this influence and, type of deal like you did. Like you were in Cali and came back and implemented it here. So when was the Kenmore team born and how was it born?
So I was, once again, it's mentors that were in my life. I was super, super fortunate. So I came back from college and I was, I went straight into, I grew up in a farming business. I'm just a farm kid, and so
In Tri-Cities or
yeah, north of Pasco, and my dad's still actively farming, and then I'm also a financial partner in some of those businesses, and so that's where I kind of learned, I think, work ethic,
Yeah.
and you can always, you can outwork a lot of problems. It's not the overall solution, but it's a foundation. Because there's a lot that goes along with that, and work, a lot of people like say work smarter, not harder. The problem with that is in today's social media, too much of it gets lost in work smarter, and they forgot the other half of that equation.
Yeah.
Okay, and some of people think it's work smarter, never work, and that doesn't work. That does not work. And so I learned kind of the basis of that hard work. Came back. I was in agriculture full time for the first 3 years, but I've always been a multiple source of income person. I took a lot of real estate classes in college. And so I was running a lawn care business at night too. So I was farming, running a lawn care business at night, and I was
You're a landscaper, huh?
I was doing the lawns at a real estate company here in town. And there's an amazing, I would call him just, legend in the Tri-Cities real estate, Jeff Presby. He owned, it's now Berkshire Hathaway,
Okay.
and his son runs it, Paul Presby. And so they're just, fantastic people. And Jeff, he literally came out of the office and said, he said, "Didn't you get a college degree?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Why are you mowing the lawns?" He's like, "Yeah, I can teach you how to sell 1 or 2 houses and you'll make way more." And so he's like, "Come in here, get signed up for the test." I mean, he pretty much drugged me in. And so,
You were how old at the time?
so I was probably 22.
Wow.
Yeah, and so, and I'm like, yeah, I took classes that this is easy stuff for me to do. And so, I took the real estate test, and then I did start. Originally, I said I was only going to take the test to look for investments because I was still farming full time. And so I took the test. I started to look around for investments through the MLS and get to know real estate and the processes. And then I started selling a couple houses to like friends and family. Took a look, really liked it. Like it was something that came easy for me. I'd always been interested in sales. When I was in college, to get through college, I sold shoes at Nordstrom's. And that's where I really learned sales techniques, was through Nordstrom's. And then it just kind of went right into that. And so farming things were a little
What
rough.
type of farming for a farming community?
Big agricultures like sweet corn,
Okay.
potatoes, field corn, tractors, irrigated agriculture in our
Nice.
area. And so it was interesting. I went to, after a couple of years, I went to my dad and I were talking about stuff. And, probably it was really cool. Like, you talk about your parents giving you a lot of good advice. And my dad said, he said, "Hey, if we can have multiple streams of income, and I can run an ag business and you can run a real estate business, and we can still keep some of this together, then I think we'll be better off at the end of the day, with multiple streams of income." And so he said, "You go to town, run that, keep track of this other stuff financially." And at the end of the day, both got better because of it. And so that was probably 05, 06 when I was a full-time real estate agent, working with the mentor with Jeff Presby. He kind of taught me the business. And it was about 2 years later, then I was, I just started out an agent on my own. But that's when I really started to see the trends of the teams developing. So I started to figure out, how can I hire an agent under me? How can I have an assistant to help me with the paperwork? How can I make this process more efficient? Because it was terribly inefficient. The singular agent model, I believe to be terribly inefficient. Now there's people that will totally disagree with me, and they'll listen to this and be like, "Well, you don't get great customer service and you can't control every piece of the transaction, and I'm responsible for every last detail." And was amazing maybe back then. I don't think so now, because I can tell you a couple different things. I can't fly a drone. I can't take professional pictures. If I start to do a large amount of volume, I'm terrible at the paperwork. But I'm a fantastic negotiator. I know a deal when I see it. I'm great at bringing people on opposite sides of the table together. How can I just do those 3 things all day? And that's when we really started to get the team concept, specialization in place.
Trust, all the whole
Yeah, and that's why we built the team. And so, as the industry, as things became more complicated, a certain level of specialization had to happen to make it work, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, and so I remember listening from Elon Musk one time. He's like, a lot of people, they want to be the smartest person in that room. He's like, but I'm okay with not being the smartest person in the room, and that's why I hire the right people
Yeah.
to be in those positions. And I was talking with a friend last night, and he's like, you know what, in the next 5 or 10 years, I want to own my own business, because I want to. He started talking about the nuts and bolts. I want to know how to do this. I want to know how to do that. And I was like, you know what? I was like, I think you have the right idea, but just know it doesn't have to be 5, 10 years from now. It could be in 3 months or in a year, because I'll tell you what, I said, I've never installed one shingle in my life.
Yeah.
I've never put one insulation plate in
Yeah.
a flat roof, but I hired people that were very, very good at what they did, and I had the trust, and we developed this friendship where I was like, I'm paying you to do this. I trust you to do this. If you need any help from me with whatever I can, call me. But ever since then, like I don't have to be involved in every little piece of my business.
No, I understand, and I'm actually blown away and excited and for you that you have figured that out at such a young age. Because I probably would have a business 5 or 6 times, bigger if I had, done that at your age. But it's hard, like, right? It's hard to give up control,
Yeah.
like, and you become known. I also think there's some ego involved with that
Mm-hmm.
too. And that was, and I had really good, on top of great mentors. I've always kept a business coach. Like I grew up, like even in college. So I was on like a national like rowing team. So we would go
Okay.
my college. We would go compete, and so I was one of those. I was a farm kid, right? So when I saw a sport that said you got up at 4 a.m., I just thought I should do that.
Like that one
Because
movie, what's it called? The famous one where they row and stuff.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So I grew up rowing and being coached, and I didn't want to stop being coached, and so I've always kept a business coach as well. But the business coach all the time is saying like, you can't control wanting to control every detail like that. There's some ego involved because you do want to say like, man, I'm the best at that, but you really probably aren't. And so a lot of times we have to tell people. And they're shocked all the time. Like people will call me and be like, "Hey, I need to get a price on this house," and I'll start to schedule the appointment, and I'll be like, "Hey, okay, like so we need to get Alex out there to like give you the narrow down the exact price," and they're like, and so sometimes they'll be like, "Well, why aren't you coming out?" And sometimes I laugh because depending upon where the house is and stuff, I tell them, I'm like, "You do not want me coming. Like, I am not the right guy to be out there. Like,
Right.
I'll screw it up." Like, Alex knows that section of West Richland better than anybody. And he's had like 14, personal sales there in the last 3 months. And so I'm going to send him out for that position. And when I was younger, I probably wouldn't have said that, but
Exactly. I'll be out there right
I'll be
now.
out there.
Yeah.
No one can
30
price that. No one
minutes.
can price that as good as I can.
Right. Right.
But we grow up a little bit, and I get coached enough, and then people, build that trust and confidence, and then you let them grow with it.
And so you finally you realize the team and the process and stuff like that. And so then when did you say the Kenmore team, this is gonna be
Yeah, so we
it?
grew up in the Prudential and then Berkshire network, and there just became a point where there were certain things we wanted to do and have in our local market that a national franchise wouldn't allow.
Mm-hmm.
So we started to roll out some programs that were slightly controversial for our area. They weren't nationally because, like I said, I traveled a lot to see what guys were doing. And so another one of my mentors in Phoenix was rolling out the guaranteed sale program, which was like, if I don't sell your house, I'll buy it. And so that was really scary to a lot of people because it was not in our market before. So the national brands and the franchise that I was under, they didn't want us running those types of programs. And so it became a thing where we would modify them a little bit. But there was a lot of layers of administration to get to a yes, and I needed to be there faster to implement some of that. So we just got to a point where to grow further, we had to put our name on the door and become our own broker. And it's pretty rare. We're the largest independent company in the Tri-Cities
Mm-hmm.
now. A lot of people are affiliated with national
Mm-hmm.
franchises. So you'll see like your KW or Coldwell Banker, Remax, Compass, some of these new ERAs back in the area, some of these newer ones. But with technology that's out there now, I believe we're way more nimble and make faster decisions when we're making localized decisions, and we can give national exposure with technology now. The web, the internet, Instagram, Facebook. It's changed that dramatically to where we can make, I believe, faster, better decisions for our clients and keep our costs down by being independent.
So I'm gonna go back a little bit now. So where and when did you and Karen meet?
Oh man, we met in college.
Okay, at
Yeah, at
Pacific.
Pacific Lutheran
Okay.
over there in Tacoma. We had mutual friends. She was an athlete also, so we were both stayed over. we stayed over a break. I think it was spring break because we both had to train. So we were there for crew and she was there for soccer, and incredible soccer player. And they were living in a house off campus, and their house got, I should think, thievery. Their house got broken into.
You should think.
And so we had mutual friends, and they were a house of girls, and they're like, "Hey, would you guys come and stay over in case like they come back or they were scared?" I mean, I'm in college, right? I mean,
Right.
girls are inviting us to stay over. That when does this happen? So
Sure.
our mutual friends, I was the first guy to sign up. You don't have to ask me twice. So we went over there, and yeah, we just hit it off right away. And both
Nice.
athletes, both hard workers, and super.
You guys graduated at the same time?
Yeah, I graduated at the same time. So she'll be so mad I said this. She needed an extra half semester because she changed her major midway. And I was like, I think I can do this in 3.5 instead of 4. And so I sped up so that I could graduate at the same time.
Nice.
Yeah.
And so ever since then, the rest is history. So then you got 2 kids, a boy.
Yep.
And yeah.
2 kids. They're absolutely incredible. I mean, that was really, I love being a parent. Like it became my, number one job, I like to say. And sometimes that's probably mistaken. Your spouse should be maybe your number one, but it's right there, 1, 2, right?
I heard this one time. It's like your wife is a chandelier and your kids are the light bulbs. Eventually, you have to change them out and pack them out, and they
Yes,
go. But your
exact- wife
stays, right?
Exactly. And that's what I've got. That's what we just went through that. Both of them are off to college. We're big proponents of athletics. And so, we came from that background. So our kids were super, super high level hockey players. And my son, unfortunately, my wife and I are like 5'10" and 5'2", so he did not get enough height.
Sure.
So he plays club, but he's going to a great university, Southern Methodist down in Texas. And
Right.
then my daughter got a D1 scholarship to play hockey,
Oh,
and so
cool.
she's off to Boston.
So we need to talk because this just blew my mind, and like so me being the only child, like my parents knew where I was, anywhere, any time of the
Yeah.
day, right?
Yeah.
Let alone spend the night at a friend's house. Was like, I don't think so. Like you're staying at your house because that's where you type of traditional. And so I remember you were like, I just got back from Canada. I'm like, oh, what were you doing up there? And you said you were at a graduation.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, your daughter graduated from college? And you're like, no, she just graduated from high school.
Yeah, and you were like, long pause
I was like,
on the phone. Yeah.
don't you live in Tri-Cities? Though?
Yeah, so that
so
was
speak on that because it just blows me the level of trust that you had to have, the how hard it was on you and your wife, but now to see the fruit on the tree after that, she's now gonna live the dreams that because she brought it to you, right?
Yeah, and so that's what I talk about a lot, like that I think the missing piece when we talked about the hard work portion in there. I think the missing piece that in today's Instagram society or TikTok society, we're getting, and don't get me wrong, I love both of them, but we're getting 20 or 30 minute chunks because our attention spans have come to that point. And so I think a lot of people don't realize, the amount of sacrifice that comes into those choices. And so when a kid, comes to you and looks like, what's your end goal here? Are you doing this to go to the Olympics? Are you doing this to go to college? Are you doing this, to gain additional skill? And so the reality of the situation, if you look at, say, the ice hockey world, is that you're going to have roughly 25,000 female ice skaters in the US, which isn't a lot. But percentage wise, it's a high amount. So you're already like, man, that's not a lot, when we start to break that down per state.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at only 8,000 of those are roughly going to have a chance to, even play in college. And then when we go down to the Division I level, you look at that as we're only getting so there's roughly 130 roster spots for freshmen each year.
Wow.
in that arena. And so you're like, okay, we're going to have to do something crazy to be there. And so we had played. Mia was a great skater. early on, she got, we would take her to skating camps, in the summer. And so we would go to Canada, really work on the fundamentals. Like you need to, and so once again, it was kind of like I ran my business, right? And so it was like, okay, who's doing, who is teaching the fundamentals of skating? Well, it's not any, I mean, there are a couple in Tri-Cities. I don't want to take away from three or four individuals.
Right.
But for the most part, we're not producing a crap ton of amazing ice hockey players, going D1 out of Tri-Cities.
Right.
Like there was like 4 in the last 2 years, So it's like, okay, well, we need to go to Canada then because, all of their girls skate. So we started going to camps and talking to people and making that trip up there, and she learned the fundamentals. But you're right. The trust factor was like she realized at the end of like her 8th grade year that she had been playing with boys. So, and that's a whole nother conversation. But up until that point, she always played on high level boys teams, which was fundamental in her training. Like train with somebody that's better than you are. So for her, it was the fact she always skated with boys. They were bigger, stronger, faster. So she had to find a way to be stronger and faster in those situations and make smarter choices. And so she always did. So that was great training. But she knew somebody either told her at one of these camps or she had decided in her mind. She came to us and she said, I want to play girls hockey and I want to play in college. Like that's what she said. And so Karen and I just looked at each other. And at first we were kind of like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Do it. And she's like, well, no, that means like I want to go to one of these academies next year. And Karen and I, like, I see my wife looks at me and we're like, well, you don't understand, honey. That means you have to move, like, to do that. And she's like, yeah, that's what I want to do. And we're like, oh God, are you serious? And she's like, yeah. And so that was hard, right? Like I always tell people, accidents happen and time happens. And parents hate it when I talk to them about this, but I lost, in my mind, I lost my girl 4 years early.
Yes.
Like my parenting to that point, I thought I had 4 more years and then it was gone, so
her freshman, sophomore, junior, senior.
I'm not going to be there every day. And so, so we had to look into the programs. And so when I talk to people that have girls in 6th grade or kids or boys, I look at moms and dads when I'm with them and I say, man, you only have your son for 2 more years. What's the next 2 years look like for you? And they're like, well, they think I'm crazy. They're like, well, no, that's not even possible. And I said, no, well, it happened to me. What happens in 2 years if your son's gone or leaves or your daughter's not here? Like, what are you going to do the next 2 years to prepare them for that? And it really like makes it real. Most of them, their moms start crying. Dads are like, like, oh my gosh, this is too much, or they say they're not ready. They can't do it. And I love these podcasts of like Cameron Haynes. Have you ever seen some of his stuff? Yeah. He's a hunter out of Oregon, probably one of the best bow hunters in the world. Joe Rogan talks about him on his podcast. But he talks about his kids and he says, man, I get comments on social media. My boys are out hiking and hunting and they think it's too much and they can't handle it. And he says, I'm never going to put my kids in a situation I don't think they can handle. But I am going to work. I am going to put them in a situation. If I do think they can handle it, I'm going to let them go into that situation. And I think his son just 2 months ago or a month ago, I just saw some update. I think he beat David Goggins' pull-up record.
Oh my God.
His young,
David Goggins is a beast.
One of his sons. And so, Cameron talks about that with parents is just like, let your kids have some of those challenging situations. And for us, it did work. I'm not going to say there wasn't like some hard things that happened in that situation if I look back. So our kid was in Canada during the pandemic when all of the borders got shut down. So we went and got her before that happened, brought her home, and then she was ready to go back. She was allowed back on a study permit. No one in the world, none of us knew that the travel ban was going to last for over a year. And so there was basically a year period where she was in Canada and we were not allowed to see her because we could not cross the border. There was no exemptions. So that was tough, right? That made a tough situation now even harder. And so,
And so you and your wife talked about it, and
yeah,
you guys said we're not going to be the reason why our daughter doesn't go
yeah,
D1. As hard
exactly.
as this is, we trust her and we
Yep.
think we did a good job parenting to this point, and now
Yep.
we just got to give her that trust.
Yeah, and then I mean, we were intimately involved in pre-pandemic. We were traveling up there every other week and finding a way to. Sometimes I couldn't go because of business, and
Hmm.
Karen would go, and we would switch off. And yeah, and so, but we knew she could handle it at the same time, like that we talked about, and and Cameron Haynes says like. Each kid, you have to kind of evaluate the differences there, but it was an option of she can handle it. So, and
Yeah,
her brother was very supportive too, which was super cool to see. He had played high level hockey. If he was taller, he probably would have made it himself. The numbers are a little harder for boys. See,
yeah,
there's a
for
lot of
sure.
amazing
You're talking
tall
a six
athletes.
five
Yeah.
dude from the country that are just
And
not getting
so it
room.
was super cool to see him. We talk about that positivity. It was super cool to see. He is like her biggest cheerleader. It's pretty awesome to
That's
see.
cool.
Yeah.
I'm the only child, so I can't relate to that. But like,
Yeah.
so like you being the dad, both your kids are in college now, and so the podcast is like the whole point of this podcast too was like, man, I just really wanted to put some content out there for the younger generation because
Yes.
there's
Yes.
a huge void, I feel like,
Yep.
between, hey, you go to college or you get into trades, and I don't feel like anybody should be belittled because they choose not to go to college. They want to do
100%.
a trade because
Yep.
that's what they're good at. So what, as you um helped your kids with certain decisions and shared some of your insight, what would you tell to the people that are coming out of high school, not maybe sure what they want to do, or they're going into college? Like, what's from your experiences that you've seen? What would you, kind of? I know it's kind of a broad topic, but like some of the main things that
No,
you
I,
would
th- I
say.
I think some of the big things out there that I would say is find an opportunity to um, get some different experiences, right? So try a couple different things, but the big thing is I would say become self-sufficient as fast as possible. Like some of the stuff you can't learn until you're on your own.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, get out of the house, like get out from under the roof, of your parents. Even if it's in the same town, I would say experience what it's like to live in a cheap apartment, or to rent a singular room from somebody else that's not your parents. Get out there and as fast as you can, look at what self-sufficiency looks like there. And then I would say find a mentor that can help guide you in that situation. It's really difficult to figure a bunch of this stuff out on your own, and it takes
Exactly.
a lot longer. And so I think if when you're looking, you will find a mentor. If you prepare your brain to say, is there somebody that can help show me something? If you're willing to put in the work at the same time, that person will show up
What do
in
they
your
say?
life.
When the student is ready, the teacher will
Yeah,
appear.
that's exactly right, and so, and there was a lot made of like the law of attraction, they say. And the law of attraction, is like, it's kind of that whole thing. Like if you think that you can, you're right. Meaning like if you're like, I want to find a mentor, you will find one if that's the mindset you're going from. The biggest portion to remember with the law of attraction is built into that word is action. And so
Mm.
if you have that mindset and then you take steps in action to move forward, it's going to happen.
So I guess I gotta ask this question because for me, like I feel like my biggest thing when I was a senior in high school, I got associated with Worldwide Dream Builders and the Amway Corporation
Yeah.
stuff, and that's kind of. But I loved the leadership and everything that I learned from Worldwide Dream Builders. But one thing was like you're a product of you're a product of your association.
Yeah.
Who you're around is who you're going to be. You choose your top three friends. You're going to have the average lifestyle of them, and then so I really adopted that, and man, it made a huge difference in my life personally. But as a parent, did you really monitor like who your kids were around and who they kind of
Yeah, we
hung
did.
out with, or
Yeah, we did, they have to make some mistakes and see what that looks like. But no, but we did. I mean, we did stuff like, and people talk about this like a lot. Like I wanted them to go to a certain school because I saw that the test results at that school, were the highest. So it's like, how can I get, when the time comes, how can I get to that school district? What's the plan for me to buy a house there? And if I can't afford that house, is there an apartment in that school district that we can go to, or a townhouse that we can find, to get there? And so we were definitely wanting to put them in that environment of, of like-minded students that were achieving high results. Because like you said, you do become an average of, like they said, I think you said 3, and I've read 5, so if you look at the 5 people around you, they start to be challenged in that situation. And so I think we just had to teach our kids, like, if there was somebody that didn't have that mindset and was bringing you down, doesn't mean they're a bad person, but they're not right for the majority of the time that you're gonna be spending.
Yeah, a couple of the things that I've always just kind of had in the back of my head was like, you hang around with 3 millionaires and you're the only one that's not a millionaire, you'll eventually get there.
Yeah.
And if you hang around the barbershop long enough, you'll eventually get a haircut.
Yeah, like, see, my biggest thing is I need to hang around with skinnier people because see, so that's what I'm lacking right now. I know this is a podcast, but there's some video that goes along with it. Like, I need to hang around with like somebody, that is way skinnier than I am, or 5 of them. But it's that thing, all right? Like, if you go to the gym and you're hanging out with people that go to the gym, and then you start talking about what you eat and stuff, like, it just, you naturally that becomes what you focus on and what people are talking about. And so it's constantly just in your brain.
And I agree so much because, man, 1 month ago, just 1 month, literally on the 24th of June, it was a month. But prior to that, I was the heaviest I've ever been. I was like 199.8. And I remember stepping on the scale. I'm like, I'm not breaking too.
Yeah.
And I've always been athletic. I did, 3 sports throughout high school all the time, football, basketball, and track. And so you get caught up in business and you're on the go, and Crispito and Gatorade and Red Bull and whatever, and you forget about your health. And then you're like, oh, I let myself go and it's too hard. I don't have time to go to the gym and stuff like that. But I started hanging out with Mike. He is the founder of the Big Bro Joe Foundation, and the guy has like muscles in his muscles, right?
Yep.
And so I'm just like, dang. And so he's like, come on, work out with me, And so we started on May 24th, and he's like, I just need you to follow this plan.
Yep.
Follow this plan. Your protein shake, whatever he gave me and stuff like that. He's like, but I need you to follow it. So I'm like, okay, this guy obviously knows what he's talking about, so I'm just going to try it 1 month.
Yep.
June 24th, 3 days ago or whatever, I was from 199 to I was 185.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
And I went from 29% body fat to 27.7.
Yeah.
Just minor, but it was in 1 month, just from being I would just say intentional with what I was eating and with what I was doing throughout my day. Water, a gallon of water, man, I was pulling over at every gas station. But
they say like 80% of it's in the kitchen. And so like you followed those results, and that's how you can, and that's when the smarter part comes into play, right? Like, so people say, work smarter, not harder. Like, it's both, right? Like, that wasn't easy, like what you did, but you knew like 80% of the results are going to come in the kitchen and with eating. And so you're like, I'm going to focus on that. Yeah, I'm doing the workouts and that makes me feel good, but I'm going to focus on that. But you had to do it for 30 days.
Yeah.
And like you said, you had to pull over and, use the restroom all the time.
And so my dad and my mom are still from Boardman, and I'm the only child. And my mom, since I was in 5th grade, growing up throughout high school, there was never one day during the school week that my mom didn't have breakfast ready for me. Whether it was, I'm talking about like a full course breakfast, not just cereal or whatever, like pancakes or whatever.
Yes.
And so like she still does that. She sends it with my dad from Boardman. My dad show up because my dad's my project manager, runs all my trailers and stuff like that. My dad will show up to my house first, drop it off at the front door, so I'll have my coffee and whatever. Tortillas is like a Mexican thing.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I told my mom, you gotta stop sending me this, please, for a month. Like, just let me. And so she's like, well, what are you eating? She'd call me, have you ate yet? It's like, I'm good. Like, I'm good. Don't worry. And so,
right. But that's hard though. And a lot of people run into that. Like, that was probably her love language with you too. And you had to make that really hard decision. Like, man, I know that's my mom's love language. She gets a lot out of, feeding me and saying that to me. And I got to call her and tell her not to do it. Like, that's not an easy call. And so like you had to make a decision to do that, and it worked out in the case, but it's promoting your health, and you look great.
Sure.
And
appreciate that.
Now I'm inspired by being here. So we have the same number, like 200. Like when I hit that, I'm always like, okay, I got to do something.
Yeah. So where you're at in your current, in your life, your kids out in college, you're in Carrying Art, together all the time now, and maybe that was the case around when
Yep.
your daughter left. But with your current milestones, and I was asking this earlier, like, where are you at with your, like, what do you want to achieve? What milestones do you want to achieve if you haven't already done them? Because just with the Kenmore team and the property management side, like, that's just a huge achievement there. But like, is there other personal goals that you want to do outside of real estate and type of deal, or what?
Yeah, so we're so it's really interesting to say this at this time, but we're still in a massive growth mode. And a lot of people say, like mindset wise, that might just be always who we are. But it does start to change a little bit because you start to think longer term and legacy and the potential of, family being in the business long term. And so, right now, like the cool thing is we are starting to create, other teams within our team. So, and we are growing, growing some leaders now, leadership within our organization. So the cool thing is now is the big focus is like I can teach other people in our organization, what it takes to go to the next level, whether that be income wise or even health wise, because there's now leaders in our organization that are better at those things than I am. And so I can teach the overall crafting of the leadership skills and help them and coach them. And so now for me, it becomes like growth in our leadership, within our organization. We can bring on individual agents and positions and stuff, and we can develop a great life for you. But we're also now developing big time leaders within our organization. And that's a focus for me and a little bit of a different skill set, a little bit. And so I'm working on doing a better job with that and the
Sure.
leadership team. But yeah, we're still in a big growth mode because our team size is probably only at about half of what it should be on the residential sales side. And then we're in a massive growth and acquisition mode for our property management company too. And we've been out, looking for opportunities and making offers on other markets as well.
Mm.
So now we're starting to grow outside of Tri-Cities. So,
Like outside of Washington, or just
yeah, outside of Washington. Yeah, we've
Nice.
been right now West Coast, but we've been looking at West Coast options. But you got to make these business evaluations take time and due diligence, and it's I
It's
treat
not
it.
one day from another.
No, I treat it a lot like real estate too, real estate investing and stuff. And I mean, you might look at 100, make offers on 10 and get one. And so that's difficult, right? Evaluate 100 opportunities, make offers on 10, and you might get one. A lot of people are not willing to do that.
So you started talking about this, your mindset is to start developing the leaders within your organization and
Yep.
really helping them. And
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people want to do that so they can maybe either still be involved or just step away and have them kind of run the show. But I feel like a lot of business owners don't do that because they go, well, what if he starts his own business, or what if
Yeah.
he does everything? Why would I waste my time? So then they go on and do their own things. Like, what's your mindset on that?
Oh, that's a hard one, man. That is a work in progress, right? Like, and it's got to be a good fit. Like, you do have to provide value. So I feel like if I'm showing up every day and providing value, then they will stay with our organization.
Mm-hmm.
If that's the case, if I'm not that person for them, then they need to go find that. Like I would want the same thing. And I always go back to, I play devil's advocate and put me in that position where I'm always like, what wasn't I getting when I needed to, become independent? What wasn't I getting from the franchises? And then I try to provide that same value back to people in our organization. And so, and then two, a lot of it's feedback, like asking them, what do you need from me? And two, and then just, I network. I'm still, like I said, I'm still in those industry groups, but I'm also in non-industry groups where we meet once a month with, people with other businesses. And we talk about what should I be doing to get that value, and true accountability, where I'll bring up an idea and somebody I'm in a room with 5 or 6 guys that can say to me like, Lance, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Or why did you do that? That was stupid,
Right.
And so I think just continuing, I've learned a lot from being around those guys that have 200, 300, 500 employees and how they handle things, and getting myself into a position to be able to act like that as
And
well.
and you've had that, probably that, maybe multiple people that were pretty big in your business
Yeah,
throughout the years that maybe have left
have
because
left. Yep.
a better position, or at that time, like, it's hard,
It's so hard. And I take things, I have a tendency to take things, pretty personally, but that's part of our culture as well. Like I want people to have a family member type of culture. And that is, that's the culture that we have. And that's what I'm instilling with our leadership team. And that's not right for everybody, but it does hurt. It always takes me, yeah, well, maybe some people it takes longer, but it always takes me an afternoon or a day or two to really,
Yeah, no, knocking on wood,
compose
I haven't had
compose
that. I
myself,
haven't had that yet, but I can see that happening down the road where, like, I have a key employee and it's like, man, like, I don't want you to leave.
Right.
And it's like, my mindset was like, man, if you have people leaving your organization, it's one, they're not happy where they're at. Two, you're not paying them enough money. But for me, like, that's not the case. Like, I pay my guys very well, and we have a really good relationship. But I just know that there's going to be a point in time where they just want to do their own thing,
Yep,
and there's not
exactly.
anything that you can do to beg them or to stay. And it's just one of those things that you kind of.
Yeah, and I still talk with a lot of those
Mm-hmm.
people, all the time. I've
Mm-hmm.
got some great, very healthy competitors in the market, and I got a text from one this weekend. I think she sent me a screenshot of an ad we had at a golf course, and she's like, I think she said something like, "Can I go anywhere and not see you?" And I texted back and said, "Oh my gosh, how are the kids?" Because I'm getting
So
used to
cool.
seeing them, and so we just have that relationship. And other team members have gone on to be like, real estate wasn't great for them, and they've gone on to be lenders. And I see them around town, and I cannot not hug them. And
And
I'm
it's,
not a hugger, but
yeah,
when I see them, I want to give them a hug because I'm
right.
so excited. So,
And it's true when they say, like, never burn a bridge,
oh yeah, yeah, no, I mean, it's just, yeah, I mean, like
especially in your industry.
you said when you started, you're like, I think Tri-Cities is like the biggest, littlest town. And I mean, it is like high school here, like we are very, very connected in the community. And there's a lot of long-term relationships that's part of what makes it great to be here.
Yeah, no kidding. So no, we'll definitely have to bring Trini on, and that's a really good suggestion. I've been thinking about that.
Oh yeah,
That would
he's
be
just a
too.
monster, man, and mindset wise, and yeah, and growth wise and stuff. Just an
I had no
absolute.
idea you guys were pretty close like that.
Oh gosh, yeah, just absolute monster. I can't wait to listen to that show when you do have him on. I'm gonna call him after this and bug him about getting on here.
Yeah, no, sweet. Well, it was a pleasure having you, man. I know we're getting to our time, but I mean,
Okay.
grateful for the opportunity and thanks for all the work you send our way, and so much
Well,
appreciated.
absolutely. Well, yeah, good luck in what you're doing here. And this is super professional and awesome. And yeah, I'm just excited to see what happens from it, and be a subscriber.
All right.